The movie star I spent 9 years saving is a madman. I spent 9 years of my youth and all my heart making Gusi Zhou, who once struggled in the mud, into a superstar. He once held me tightly in our leaky rental apartment and swore, Tang Jixia, when I win Best Actor, I will present the best of the whole world to you. Later, he actually became the youngest 3-time Best Actor winner. But on the night of the celebration party, holding the hand of the popular rising starlet Bai Qianqian, he said to me lightly, Jixia, you've worked hard, but the current you, standing by my side, is no longer appropriate. He forgot that to help him sort out his first decent performance contract. I argued with the other company's legal team at a drinking party, stayed up all night modifying clauses, and almost fainted from exhaustion in the meeting room. In my past life, I believed his so-called temporary separation for the sake of his career. I endured all the humiliation, just begging him to spare a glance for our son. Instead, he imprisoned me in a suburban villa, let Bai Qianqian enter the house, and she became the media's first love muse of movie Emperor Gu. I watched helplessly as our son, Gu Nian'an, imitating Bai Qianqian, poured cold leftovers over my head, cursing me as a shameless, outdated woman clinging to his father. That was the 5th day I had been starved. I crawled over like a dog to eat those dust-covered leftovers, but they were mixed with poison that would rot my insides. When I opened my eyes again, I returned to that night. The night Gu Shizhou won his first International Best Actor award, and Bai Qianqian openly kissed his cheek backstage, setting the internet on fire with the photos. When his agent handed me that agreement saying, be sensible and leave on your own, I smiled and signed it. Looking at the 9-figure hush money credited to my account, I immediately booked 3 tickets to Iceland for me, my son, and the second child just detected in my womb. Agent brother Zhao looked at me with a charitable gaze, his tone laced with undisguised disdain. Tang Jixia, this money is enough for a woman with your background to be fed and clothed for the rest of your life. Be smart, don't appear in front of Zhizhou again and delay his bright future. I only found it ironic. In my past life, Gu Shizhou acted out deep affection and gratitude to the fullest. It was him who remembered every anniversary, him who warmed my feet with his chest in winter, and him standing by the stove in the shabby tenement, stir-frying vegetables while saying, I've wronged you, my big lawyer. But later, it was him who said I couldn't keep up with his pace, him who tacitly allowed Bai Qianqian to drug me, and him who said coldly, you should have disappeared voluntarily long ago, while I writhed in agony from the poison. A familiar cramping sensation in my stomach pulled me back from the nightmare of my past life. I gently stirred the coffee in front of me, looked up at him, the corner of my mouth curling into a calm, distant arc belonging to a lawyer. Brother Zhao, I received the money. Please tell movie Emperor Gu that from now on we go our separate ways. Also, please handle this cleanly. Don't let anyone know that Gu Shizhou climbed to the top standing on the shoulders of a woman named Tang Jixia. Brother Zhao's face changed. He hadn't expected me to be so coherent and hit the nail on the head. He snorted coldly, grabbed the agreement and stood up. Rest assured, Zizhou and you were never people from the same world. Move out of the apartment immediately and stop annoying Miss Qianqian. In my past life, when Gu Shizhou learned my parents died early and I relied on scholarships and part-time jobs to finish law school, he teared up and said, Zixia, in the future, my home is your home, I am your family. Later, when I was dying, he held Bai Qianqian and said lightly, luckily, you have no relatives or friends, it's clean when you die. Initially, I did feel guilty towards Gu Shizhou. I always thought he hurt his head and temporarily lost part of his memory, causing his career to hit rock bottom because he blocked a crazy stalker fan's attack for me. At that time, his emotions were extremely unstable, a slight stimulation would cause splitting headaches. I rejected all invitations from other legal consultants, guarding him wholeheartedly. By day, I handled his complex contract disputes. By night, I studied entertainment industry rules and networks. All the money I earned was used to give him the best rehabilitation treatment. Every time I returned home exhausted and falling apart, he would hug me, choking up as he promised, Jixia, when I get better, I will compensate you 100-fold, 1,000-fold for the suffering you've endured. Until he stood on the Best Actor podium. At a celebration party, in front of all the media and big shots in the industry, he introduced Bai Qianqian as his source of inspiration and destiny. And I, Tang Jixia, who handled his legal affairs for 9 years and ensured his success, only received this line from him. I also thank my former legal consultant, Miss Tang, for her years of dedication. The eyes of the crowd, whether mocking or pitying, pierced me like needles. Even the new assistant in his team dared to order me around. It wasn't until I was dying that I learned his 2 memory losses were fake, just excuses to test me and shake off the brand of his humble beginnings. Even that stalker fan attack happened because he was photographed flirting with Bai Qianqian, and he deliberately provoked the other party to suppress the trending topics. Fortunately, in this life, everything is still in time. When Gu Shizhou returned to the high-end apartment we used to call home, it was already 3 in the morning. Violent knocking on the door nearly shook the panels. Outside, he smelled of alcohol, his brows furrowed. Qianqian caught a cold filming night scenes and wants to drink the brown sugar ginger milk tea you make. Go make it now. I looked up and saw Bai Qianqian wrapped in his expensive suit jacket behind him. She seemed to be wearing only a silk slip dress underneath, revealing exquisite collarbones and long legs. Bai Qianqian snuggled up to Gu Xizhou's side, her tone soft and tender, but her eyes carried the flaunting of a victor. I'm so sorry, Sister Jixia, to trouble you so late. I don't know what's wrong. I just crave that specific taste of yours. Xizhou said only yours is the most authentic. As she spoke, she shrank deeper into Gu Xizhou's arms. It's cold at night. You're wearing so little. Do you want to get sick again? Gu Xizhou scolded in a low voice, his tone overflowing with doting affection. In the previous life, after I had been starved for 5 days, Bai Qianqian personally brought that bowl of spoiled rice mixed with poison. She pinched my chin, forcing me to look up, and said, Tang Jixia, look at you now. You're not even as good as a beggar on the street. Xizhou said he feels sick just looking at you. Why haven't you died yet? I struggled desperately, only to receive punches and kicks from the bodyguards. Bai Qianqian smiled and ground the heel of her high heel into my fingers, saying, Weren't these hands quite good at reviewing contracts and handling troubles for Xizhou before? Why aren't they working now? Gu Xizhou stood to the side, gently holding her waist, saying, Qianqian, don't get angry over this kind of dirty thing. Be careful, your hand might hurt. The memories were like an ice cone piercing my bones. I subconsciously clenched my fist. Suddenly my arm hurt. I was yanked out of my memories by a great force. Gu Xizhou impatiently grabbed my arm, dragged me roughly out of the room, then choked the back of my neck and slammed me hard against the cold wall. Did you not hear Qianqian talking to you? What kind of attitude is this? Can't she even order you around anymore? He let go suddenly. Caught off guard, my back slammed heavily against the wall. The old injury sent a piercing pain through me, making me break out in a cold sweat instantly. The pain spread, and my heart felt as if it was soaking in bitter seawater, swollen and unbearable. Gu Xizhou, my back, did you forget how it got hurt? In this life, I didn't want to show weakness in front of him, but physiological tears still gushed out uncontrollably. That time in the past life when I blocked the stalker fan for him, my vertebrae cracked, leaving permanent damage and a ferocious scar. Gu Xizhou had kissed that scar countless times, red-eyed, saying he owed me, and he would never let me get hurt again. Never doubt sincerity, but sincerity changes in an instant. Gu Xizhou's movements froze for a moment, a complex look flashing in his eyes, but it was quickly covered by indifference. He sneered, Ancient history. Why bring it up? You, a former legal advisor, still want to bind me for a lifetime with this bit of kindness. I looked up at his handsome but unfamiliar face, and the last faint glimmer of hope in my heart was completely extinguished. At the edge of my vision, however, a small figure appeared, rubbing its eyes as it walked over. He was wearing his little pajamas, walking over in a daze, but when he saw Bai Qianqian, his eyes lit up, and he ran straight over to hug her legs. Auntie Qianqian. What are you doing here? Bai Qianqian shot me a smug glance, then bent down to scoop him up. Her voice was cloyingly sweet. An is such a good boy. Did you miss Auntie? I did. Gunian An answered loudly. Only then did he seem to notice me. His little face instantly crumpled. Pointing a finger at me, he said to Gu Xizhou, Daddy, why is this bad woman still in our house? She scolded Auntie Qianqian on her phone today. I saw it. I froze. I hadn't even looked at my phone today, let alone insulted by Qianqian. Gu Xizhou's expression darkened instantly. He looked at me with pure disgust. Tang Jixia, is this all you are? Playing petty tricks behind people's backs? I didn't. Enough. Gu Xizhou cut me off. He took Gunian An from Bai Qianqian and spoke to him softly. Don't be afraid, An. Daddy will make her leave tomorrow. But Gunian An wriggled free from his arms. He ran up to me and, before I could react, kicked me hard in the shin. He didn't have much strength, but a sharp pain shot through my body instantly. Bad woman, how dare you bully Auntie Qianqian? Get out of our house. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with utter loathing. I stared numbly at the red mark swelling on my leg. It felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, making it impossible to breathe. My body was stiff, heavy as lead, unable to move a single inch. I had a premature delivery with Gunian An. I hemorrhaged badly and spent 3 days in the ICU just to survive. He was frail as a child, and I spent countless sleepless days and nights caring for him, terrified something might happen to him. The child I had poured all my love into saw me as an enemy just to please his father's new mistress. And in my past life, he even became the accomplice who handed me the bowl of poison. Gunian An was scooped back up by Gu Xizhou. He turned his head and stuck his tongue out at me. Bai Qianqian snuggled up to Gu Xizhou, smiling with praise. An is so brave, he knows how to protect his auntie. The three of them stood there. Their silhouettes in the light were harmonious and blinding. They looked like a real family. I was just an intruder, unnecessary and an eyesore. The draft in the hallway chilled my skin, and I shivered violently. I glanced at the time on my phone, less than 72 hours until my flight to Iceland took off. I returned to my room and started packing. 9 years of my life, and the things that actually belonged to me fit inside just one medium-sized suitcase. It wasn't that brands and partners hadn't sent expensive gifts. But all that jewelry, designer clothes and limited edition bags had somehow ended up on Bai Qianqian or featured on her social media accounts. Gu Xizhou's explanation was always the same. You are a lawyer. You need a professional capable image. These flashy things don't suit you. Qian is an artist, she needs them to maintain her status. Truly ironic. Pulling myself from my memories, I saw the sun was already setting outside the window. I checked my phone and decided that before I left I would visit a wonton store in the small alley where Gujizo and I first met, just one last time. I just wanted to spend these last few days in peace, but fate had other plans. I had just sat down at the store when I saw people I shouldn't have. Gujizo's van was parked at the alley entrance. He was wearing sunglasses and a mask, but his tall, upright figure still drew the eye. He carefully lifted a little girl wearing an exquisite princess dress from the car. She looked about 4 or 5 years old, and her features actually bore a slight resemblance to Gujizo. Bai Qian followed close behind, smiling gently as she reached out to smooth the girl's hair. They actually had a child this old. My heart sank like a stone, as if I had been struck by a heavy hammer. So, had he been with Bai Qian all along? Perhaps even when I was handling his legal matters, thinking we were building a life together, they had already. Just then, another small figure came into view. It was Gunyan. He was clutching a giant teddy bear, struggling to get out of the car. He trotted to catch up with Gujizo and Bai Qian, wearing a look of eager, ingratiating delight I had never seen on him before. Gujizo seemed to dote on the little girl, bending down to listen to her with a tender gaze. But his attitude toward Gunyan trailing behind them was somewhat indifferent. Watching this, my eyes stung and my breathing became difficult. The pain spread from my heart to every limb. I took a step back without realizing it, forgetting the step behind me. Just as I thought I was going to fall, a steady arm caught me around the waist. Careful. A low, pleasant voice sounded in my ear. I turned in surprise and met Pei Yuan's inquisitive gaze. He was the CEO of Starshine Media, the biggest rival to Guzijo's company, and the business arch-enemy Guzijo always claimed was out to get him. We had met a few times at business events, and he had appreciated my skill in handling contract disputes. Guzijo had clearly seen us too. His face darkened, and he strode over, ignoring Pei Yuan entirely, his sharp gaze pinning me in place. Tang Jixia found a new partner so soon? Or maybe you've been secretly involved with CEO Pei all along, which is why you agreed to leave so happily. There was no attempt to hide the malice in his words. Pei Yuan stepped forward, shielding me behind him. His tone was calm but carried a sense of authority. Watch your language, Actor Gu. Miss Tang and I just ran into each other. Ran into each other. Gu Shizhou sneered, his eyes scanning back and forth between us. In a rundown place like this? You have interesting tastes, CEO Pei, or is it that Tang Jixia is so good at reviewing contracts that she even pleased you? Smack. Before he could finish, I had slapped him across the face with all my might. I put everything I had into that slap. Gu Zizhou's head snapped to the side, and the cheek beneath his mask quickly began to swell and turn red. He turned his head back in disbelief, flames of rage instantly igniting in his eyes. He raised his hand abruptly, but Pei Yuan was faster. He grabbed Gu Zizhou's wrist with a grip tight enough to make him frown. Gu Zizhou, Bai Qian cried out as she ran over. She clung to his arm, looking at his face with heartbreak, then turned to me with tears in her eyes. Sister Jixia, how could you hit him? Shizhou was just worried about you. Worried? Listening to her clumsy lines, I felt nothing but absurdity. My throat tightened and my voice came out hoarse. Gu Zizhou, so what exactly is our relationship now? I pointed at the little girl and Bai Qian behind him. If we have no relationship, what right do you have to question who I see? And if we do have a relationship, then what are they? Gu Zizhou's expression froze, his eyes shifted, and he didn't answer immediately. Bai Qian's face turned deathly pale. She instinctively pulled the little girl behind her, her fingers curling up nervously. Just then, Gulina rushed over, clutching his teddy bear. Like a provoked wild animal, he shoved me hard. He couldn't move me, but the hatred in his eyes chilled me to the bone. Don't you bully Daddy and Auntie Qian, and little sister. You bad woman, you aren't worth a single finger of Auntie Qian's, just disappear. Auntie Qian and little sister are my family. What are you to them? Family, little sister. So, he had already had a complete real family for a long time. My heart hurt so much it was going numb, I couldn't listen to another word. I simply looked quietly at Gunyan's small face, which was so similar to mine yet filled with such hatred. Is that so? I said softly. Then you had better protect your family well. Gunyan froze, seemingly unprepared for such a reaction from me. I looked away from him and turned to Pei Yuan, speaking in a low voice. Thank you, CEO Pei. I'm sorry for the trouble again. Pei Yuan shook his head slightly, his gaze profound. I turned and walked away, leaving behind the noise, the accusations, and that seemingly happy family of four. At some point, a light rain began to fall. The cold raindrops hit my face, mixing with my hot tears. I felt as though I was separated from the world by the rain. Naturally, I couldn't hear the cold words Pei Yuan said to Gu Xizhou after I turned away. Gu Xizhou, if you touch someone under my protection, you had better be ready for the consequences. It was late into the night when I returned to the apartment that would soon no longer belong to me. To my surprise, Gu Xizhou was there. He hadn't turned on the main lights, leaving only a floor lamp. Its dim yellow glow cast the silhouette of him sitting on the sofa. Hearing the door open, he looked up. The hostility from before was gone from his face, replaced by an expression I hadn't seen in a long time. One of exhaustion and vulnerability. "You're back?" His voice was a little hoarse. I didn't say a word and walked straight toward the guest room. But he stood up, picked up a soft wool shawl from the sofa and walked over. Without waiting for an answer, he draped it over my shoulders, his movements even gentle. "It's raining. Didn't you think to bring an umbrella? Your knees are prone to arthritis. And this weather makes it flare up easily." His tone carried that familiar mix of reproach and concern. For a fleeting moment, it felt like the old days. In my past life, when I curled up in agony after swallowing that bowl of poison, he came to see me one last time. He spoke in exactly this tone. "Jixia, are you cold? Find a good man in your next life." My stomach churned violently, and I abruptly brushed his hand away. The wool shawl slipped to the floor. He froze, his gaze darkening, but he quickly masked his emotions. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a bracelet inlaid with tiny diamonds, glinting with fragmented light under the lamp. "Today, I saw it at the mall and thought it would suit you." He picked up the bracelet and, without waiting for my consent, fastened it around my wrist. "Qian has a similar bracelet too. She really likes this brand." I lowered my head to look at the bracelet, a piece of cheap jewelry comparable to Swarovski. Yet today, near the wanton stand, Bai Qian had been wearing a brand new extravagant Cartier diamond ring on her ring finger. He had given me the cheap add-on similar item, while the true treasure went to someone else. He couldn't even be bothered to remember that I had studied jewelry design in the pursuit of my own dreams. Did he really think I couldn't tell the difference? Gu Xizhou, oblivious to my reaction, continued speaking as if he were bestowing a magnificent favor. "Didn't you say you wanted to take Annan out to play? To bond with him?" The last few times the amusement park, the family sports day, Qian went with him. He's more used to her way of doing things. I checked my schedule and I happen to be free tomorrow. "Let's take Annan to the aquarium, the one he's been shouting about wanting to visit." Tomorrow was my last day before leaving. Gu Xizhou must have keenly sensed the decisiveness in me this time, and he was trying to use our son as a final plea to make me stay. Unfortunately, it was too late. My heart had long since rotted away amidst the poison of my past life. Since he had given me this opportunity, I would give him an unforgettable farewell gift before I departed. I wanted nothing more to do with Gu Xizhou, but deep down, I still wanted to try one last time to be with Gu Nianan before he was completely assimilated by this superficial world, by his father, and that ideal mother figure. There was a time when I stayed up late reviewing contracts for him, and he would bring me a cup of warm water in his little hands, saying in his milky voice, "Mommy, drink some water." "All right," I heard my own voice reply calmly. "Gunyanan, you don't have to love a mother who isn't glamorous enough, but you should never learn to trample on a sincere heart, nor should you become so mean-spirited. After all, this might be the last time we spend together in this lifetime." The next day, the weather was unexpectedly good. Gu Xizhou rarely drove himself, but today he took the wheel of a low-key SUV. He was dressed casually in sunglasses, yet still radiated the aura of a superstar. Gunyanan saw the car, cheered and scrambled into the back seat. I silently opened the rear door, intending to sit next to my son. But Gunyanan immediately hugged the seat next to him and shouted, "Save this seat for Auntie Qian. She said she's coming to find us as soon as she finishes work." My hand froze in mid-air. Gu Xizhou glanced at me through the rear-view mirror, his tone indifferent. "Qian is free today, so she's coming along. Annan likes having her with us." It felt like being pricked by countless fine needles in my chest, not intense, but a dense, stinging pain. So the so-called family day never actually included just the three of us. I said nothing, quietly closed the car door, and got into the front passenger seat. The journey was silent, except for Gu Nianan chattering away excitedly about the toys Bai Qian had promised to buy him, and the delicious food she would take him to eat. His words were filled with worship and adoration for Auntie Qian. Gu Xizhou would chime in occasionally with a gentle tone. I turned my head to watch the street scene flying by outside the window. This city held 9 years of my dreams, my love, and my sacrifices, but now it looked nothing but desolate. When we arrived at the aquarium, Bai Qian was indeed already waiting there. She was dressed youthfully and beautifully, looking like a college student. The moment she saw Gunyanan, she squatted down and opened her arms. Auntie missed you so much." Gunyanan rushed into her arms like a little cannonball. "Auntie Qian." Gu Xizhou watched the scene, a faint smile playing on his lips. The three of them walked naturally toward the entrance, as if I were the one who didn't belong. Inside the underwater tunnel, the dim blue light cast a dreamlike glow over the swimming fish. Gunyanan pressed against the glass, mesmerized by the sight. Bai Qian pulled out her phone and said in a sweet voice, "Xizhou, quick, let's take a picture with Annan here." Gu Xizhou walked over naturally and picked up Gunyanan. Bai Qian leaned intimately against his other side as all three beamed bright smiles at the camera. "So nice, it's just like we're a real family." Bai Qianqian said, looking at the photo with deliberate intent. I stood a few steps behind them, like an unrelated tourist, quietly watching this heartwarming scene unfold. Suddenly, Gu Nianan pointed at a colorful fish inside the tank and shouted at me over his shoulder. Hey, you go buy that fish for me, I want to take it home and keep it. His tone was entitled, sounding like a command. Bai Qianqian giggled behind her hand. An, you can't buy fish from the aquarium. I don't care, I want it. Gu Nianan began to throw a tantrum, shaking Gu Shizhou's arm. Daddy, make her go buy it for me. Gu Shizhou looked at me, a hint of scrutiny in his eyes that almost went unnoticed, as if testing to see how I would react. I walked over, squatted down, and looked directly into Gu Nianan's eyes. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. Gu Nianan, first of all, my name is not Hei. I am your mother, the woman who gave birth to you and raised you. Second, marine life belongs to nature. It cannot be bought or sold, nor can it be kept as a private pet. That is a basic principle of morality and the law. And finally, no one is obligated to unconditionally satisfy your every unreasonable demand. Not me, and not your father. My tone was calm and flat, devoid of anger or grievance. I was simply stating facts, much like presenting clauses in a courtroom. Gu Nianan froze. He seemed never to have heard me speak to him in such a tone. Gu Shizhou and Bai Qianqian were stunned as well. Bai Qianqian was the first to recover, trying to smooth things over. Oh, Sister Jixia, why are you being so serious with the child? Anan is still young, he doesn't know any better. Precisely because he is young, he needs to learn right from wrong, I interrupted her, my eyes still fixed on Gu Nianan. Spoiling is not love, it is harm. Gu Shizhou's face darkened. Tan Jixia, do you have to be a killjoy right now? A killjoy? I stood up and met his gaze squarely. Gu Shizhou, do you truly want your son to grow into a wastrel who cannot distinguish right from wrong, and who only knows how to take and trample on others? You. Gu Shizhou was speechless, his eyes flashing with anger. Gu Nianan watched our confrontation and suddenly burst into tears, throwing himself into Bai Qianqian's arms. Wow, she's mean to me, Auntie Qianqian, I don't want her to be my mommy. I want you to be my mommy. Bai Qianqian hugged him tightly, comforting him softly, but there was a trace of smugness in her eyes as she looked at me. Tourists nearby had already started to look over. Gu Shizhou took a deep breath, seemingly forcing down his anger. He grabbed Gu Nianan away from me and said in a low voice, All right, stop crying, let's go watch the dolphin show. He held his son and turned to leave with Bai Qianqian without so much as a glance in my direction. I stood there, watching their figures disappear at the end of the tunnel. My heart felt hollow, yet strangely, I felt a sense of relief. Some things simply cannot be forced, and it was time to let them go. The dolphin show was packed to capacity. Gu Shizhou had purchased VIP seats in the very front row. Accompanied by Bai Qianqian, he watched the spectacular performance with Gu Nianan, laughing occasionally from time to time. I sat a few rows behind them, feeling like a complete outsider. When the show reached the interactive segment, the trainer invited children up on stage for a close encounter with the dolphins. Gu Nianan raised his hand excitedly and was selected. Looking at the massive creature, he seemed both thrilled and a little frightened, looking back over his shoulder on stage, appearing somewhat lost. Bai Qianqian waved gently from the audience to encourage him. Yet Gu Nianan subconsciously scanned the crowd for me. The moment his gaze met mine, he awkwardly turned his head away, but I didn't miss that fleeting flash of dependence. A faint pang of sorrow tugged at my heart. Just then, the unexpected happened. As Gu Nianan reached out to touch the dolphin, his foot slipped, and he tumbled right into the performance pool. Nianan! Gu Xizhou and Bai Qianqian exclaimed in unison, shooting to their feet, their faces turning deathly pale. The trainer reacted instantly, jumping into the water to retrieve the child. For a moment, chaos ensued. I bolted upright, my heart pounding in my throat. That was my child, no matter how he treated me, the instinct of blood ties wouldn't let me sit idly by. Just as the trainer carried a choking, wailing Gu Nianan ashore, I had already rushed to the edge of the pool. Gu Xizhou and Bai Qianqian crowded around as well. Nianan, are you okay? Don't scare Daddy? Gu Xizhou's voice held a rare panic. Beside him, Bai Qianqian did nothing but cry. I pushed them aside, crouched down, and checked Gu Nianan's condition. He had only choked on some water and was frightened, nothing serious. I picked him up with practiced ease, laying him across my lap and gently patting his back to help him expel the water. My movements were fluid and natural, an instinct carved deep into a mother's bones. Gu Nianan coughed up a few mouthfuls of water, his crying subsiding into soft hiccups. His small hand unconsciously gripped the hem of my shirt tightly. Gu Shizhou watched my practiced movements with a complex expression. When Bai Qianqian tried to step forward to comfort Gu Nianan, I subtly blocked her path. The child has had a shock, he needs quiet, I said indifferently, holding Gu Nianan and continuing to pat his back. Gu Nianan nestled in my arms, softly sobbing, and for the first time, he didn't resist my embrace. Gu Shizhou looked at us, his lips twitching as if to speak, but ultimately, he said nothing. After the accident, the rest of the outing felt flat and dull. Gu Nianan seemed tired as well, eventually falling asleep in my arms. The car ride back was filled with silence. After dropping Bai Qianqian off at her home, only Guzi Zhou, the sleeping Gunian An, and I remained in the car. As we approached the apartment, Guzi Zhou suddenly spoke, his voice low and heavy. Today, thank you. I didn't respond. He paused, then added, I know that, over the years you have given so much to Nian An and me, Guzi Zhou. I cut him off, staring at the neon lights flashing past the window. My contributions were voluntary, but I have already paid the price. Now, I don't need them anymore. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, but he said nothing further. Once home, I gently laid the sleeping Gunian An in his small bed and tucked him in. Watching his tender sleeping face, my heart was filled with a quiet desolation. Goodbye, my child. The next day was the day of my departure. I rose early and checked my luggage one last time. Aside from essential documents and a small amount of cash, I only took a few personal items with special meaning, and the secret backups I had made. Copies of contracts and correspondence from Gu Xizhou's early years that posed potential legal risks and were sufficient to destroy his acting career. This wasn't for revenge, but simply to leave a final safeguard for myself and my child. As a lawyer, I knew all too well the importance of evidence. In a rare occurrence, Gu Xizhou was also at home and hadn't left early. He sat in the living room, watching me drag my suitcase to the door, his gaze dark and unreadable. Are you really leaving? He asked. The agreement is signed, and the money has been accepted, has it not? I replied calmly. What if I said I regret it? He looked at me, his eyes holding an emotion I couldn't distinguish as genuine or fake. Bai Qianqian and I, we aren't what you think, that child. Gu Xizhou. I interrupted him again, finding this somewhat ridiculous. You, Bai Qianqian, and your child, none of that has anything to do with me anymore. As for regret, I looked up, staring straight into the eyes that had entranced me for so many years. Your regret is worthless to me. His face turned pale, and he shot up from his seat. Tang Jixia, can you really be this heartless? Can you just give up on Nianan? It's not that I don't want him. It's you who pushed him away from me with your own hands. I took a deep breath. In the eyes of the law, he is your son. With my current status, I couldn't win against you anyway, but I hope you remember this. If he grows up to be a warped person, you, Gu Xizhou, will bear the full responsibility. Just then, my phone rang. It was Pei Yuan. Miss Tang, the car is downstairs. Do you need any help? Thank you, President Pei, but no. I'll be right down. I hung up the phone and pulled up the handle of my suitcase. The moment Gu Xizhou heard the words President Pei, his expression turned incredibly ugly. He lunged forward and grabbed my wrist with terrifying force. So it really is Pei Yuan. Are you that eager to throw yourself into his arms? Tang Jixia, I truly underestimated you. I tried to shake off his hand, but it was useless. Let go, I won't. His eyes were bloodshot, like a beast driven into a corner. Do you think Pei Yuan is a good man? He's only getting close to you to strike at me, so what? I looked at him coldly. At least right now, what he gives me is respect and help. Whereas you, Gu Xizhou, have given me nothing but exploitation, betrayal, and humiliation. I didn't, he growled. I just need time. Time to secure your position as best actor? Time to clean up the mess with your illegitimate daughter and Bai Qianqian? Time to let me, the past tense, disappear quietly? I punctured his hypocritical excuses, word by word. Gu Xizhou was rendered speechless, a look of panic flashing through his eyes. Seizing the moment, I yanked my hand back. My wrist was already red and marked. Gu Xizhou, between us, it was over the moment you allowed Bai Qianqian to poison me. Poison? Gu Xizhou's pupils shrank violently, his face full of shock. What poison? Tang Jixia, what nonsense are you spouting? Seeing the genuine shock and confusion on his face, I suddenly realized that perhaps the dirty tactics from my past life hadn't had time to happen in this one. Or perhaps he simply knew nothing about them. But none of that mattered anymore. I couldn't be bothered to explain. I grabbed my suitcase and resolutely opened the door. Goodbye, Actor Gu. I wish you a dazzling career. I walked into the elevator without looking back, shutting the door on his look of disbelief and his potential roar. Downstairs, Pei Yuan's assistant respectfully took my luggage. Pei Yuan stood by the car and opened the door for me. Is everything settled? He asked. Yes. I nodded and got into the car. The car slowly drove away from the place I had called home for so many years. In the rearview mirror, the apartment building grew smaller and smaller. I didn't look back. The airport, check-in, baggage drop, security. Everything went unbelievably smoothly. It wasn't until I was sitting in the departure lounge, watching the planes taking off and landing outside the window, that the reality of my escape truly hit me. Just then my phone started vibrating frantically. Gu Xizhou danced across the screen. I immediately hung up and blocked the number. Then I received a text message from an unknown number. It was just a single line, but it carried a desperate and manic intensity. Tang Jixia, you dare to leave. I would jump from the top of the company building right now. Come back. My heart plummeted. Would Gu Xizhou, would he really do it? The airport announcement echoed through the terminal, calling for passengers bound for Reykjavik to board. I stared at the text message on my screen, my fingers trembling just a little. Gu Xizhou was a paranoid man. And I knew that better than anyone in my past life. He had resorted to extreme measures to get what he wanted. If he actually No. I squeezed my eyes shut and took a deep, steadying breath. This was his choice. The fact that he was threatening me with his own life only proved how empty and insane he was inside, and it confirmed just how right I was to leave. I couldn't be soft-hearted. If I look back now, the only thing waiting for me was an abyss of no return. I stood up, turned off my phone without a second thought, removed the domestic SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the trash bin. Then I slotted in the temporary local SIM card I had bought at the airport. Silence. The world was finally quiet. As I boarded the plane and fastened my seatbelt, watching the city shrink through the window, I felt a sense of exhaustion I had never known before, mixed with the hope of a new beginning. Goodbye, Guzijo. Goodbye, my past. The plane soared into the clouds, carrying me away toward a brand new unknown land. After over 10 hours of flight, the plane touched down smoothly at Keflavik International Airport. The crisp, clean air of Iceland instantly refreshed my spirit. Pei Yuan seemed to have business interests here as well. His assistant had arranged everything beforehand. The airport pickup, accommodation, even language classes and local obstetrician for me. I moved into a small wooden cabin on the outskirts of Reykjavik, facing a tranquil bay. It was remote, with magnificent scenery, making it the perfect place to rest and start over. A week later, I visited a local doctor and confirmed the pregnancy. It was twins. And everything was normal. I rested my hand on my still flat stomach, my heart swelling with emotion. This was an unexpected gift, a symbol of my new life. I deleted all my social media accounts back home and severed every tie with my past. I began learning Icelandic and tried to capture the northern lights, glaciers and volcanoes with my paintbrush. Occasionally I spoke on the phone with Pei Yuan. He was always proper, his concern appropriate without ever crossing the line, yet it gave me a sense of warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. The days passed as calmly as still water, until, a month later, an uninvited guest shattered that tranquility. That day I was sitting on the porch in front of my cabin, reading a book when a black SUV came to a screeching halt outside the fence. The door opened, and a familiar figure stumbled out. It was Guzijo. He had lost so much weight. His face was covered in stubble, his eyes were sunken deep, and he reeked of alcohol. His eyes, once as bright as stars, were now bloodshot, filled with madness and despair. He glared at me, intense and unblinking, like a trapped beast that had finally cornered its prey. His voice was hoarse and broken when he spoke. Tang Jixia, I finally found you. He stepped closer, his gaze terrifyingly obsessive. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? I almost turned the entire world upside down. You're actually with Pei Yuan. His eyes swept over my clearly protruding belly, his pupils constricting sharply, his voice trembled. You are pregnant. Is it his? I looked at him calmly, neither confirming nor denying. This child belonged only to me now, Guzijo. Please leave. Leave? He let out a manic laugh, as if he'd heard the greatest joke in the world, and lunged forward. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip so hard it felt like he was crushing my bones. I'm not leaving. Tang Jixia, come back with me. We can start over. I can explain, Bai Qianqian and I, we aren't. Enough. I shoved him away, my heightened emotions from the pregnancy making me raise my voice. Guzijo, look at yourself, you look like a lunatic. I am crazy, he roared, tears welling in his eyes. You drove me to this. Why wouldn't you answer my calls? Why didn't you reply to my messages? How can you be so cruel? You could even just throw Nianan aside. I can't handle it. I looked him in the eye, enunciating every word clearly. Guzijo, we are finished. We were finished the moment you treated our 9 years together like trash for the sake of Bai Qianqian. Now I have a new life. Please stop disturbing me. A new life? He gave a tragic laugh, pointing at my stomach. You mean carrying Pei Yuan's bastard and hiding out here? Slap? I couldn't take it anymore. I slapped him hard across the face again. Guzijo, watch your mouth. You have no right to judge my life. He covered his face, looking at me in disbelief, the madness in his eyes intensifying. Just then, another car pulled up silently. Pei Yuan stepped out, wearing a black cashmere coat that blended perfectly with Iceland's cold, stark landscape. He walked quickly to my side and naturally wrapped an arm around my shoulder, shielding me behind him. He looked coldly at Guzijo. Mr. Gu, you aren't welcome here, please leave. Guzijo stared at Pei Yuan's hand on my shoulder, taking in our natural intimate posture. Finally, his gaze landed on my swollen belly. His body began to shake violently, and the look in his eyes completely crumbled. Fine. This is just fine, he staggered backward, speaking incoherently. Tang Jixia, you are ruthless enough. He suddenly threw his head back and laughed, a sound so shrill and desperate that it echoed across the empty bay. I was wrong, I was really so wrong. His laughter turned into sobbing as he fell to his knees, digging his hands into the frozen ground. He cried like a child, his voice breaking. High in the night sky, the brilliant green aurora began to dance at that exact moment. It was dreamlike, casting this absurd farce in the light of an illusion. Pei Yuan signaled to the bodyguards behind him. Take Mr. Gu to the airport. Make sure he leaves Iceland safely. 2 tall bodyguards hoisted Gu Xizhou up from the ground, one on each side. He didn't struggle anymore. He simply looked up, staring at me with eyes that were hollow, shattered, and completely devoid of light, as if trying to etch my image into his soul. The northern lights swirled behind him, breathtakingly beautiful yet bone-chillingly cold. His lips moved, but in the end, no sound came out before he was dragged out of my sight. The world fell silent again. Only the sound of the wind on the ice fields and the grand silent feast of light in the sky remained. I leaned against Pei Yuan, gently stroking the 2 babies in my belly, knowing that the old story had ended, and a new chapter had just begun. The end.